أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس لوقتها كاذبة خافضة رافعة إذا رجت الأرض رجا وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثا وأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة والسابقون السابقون أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريك وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أإنا لمبعوثون أوآباؤنا الأولون قل إن الأولين والآخرين لمجموعون إلى ميقات يوم معلوم ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون فالشاربون عليه من الحميم فالشاربون شرب الهيم هذا نزلهم يوم الدين نحن خلقناكم فلولا تصدقون أفرأيتم ما تمنون أنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين ألا نبدل أمثالكم وننشئكم فيما لا تعلمون ولقد علمتم النشأة الأولى فلولا تذكرون أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أنتم تزرعون وأم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه تاما فظلتم تفكهون إنا لمغرمون بل نحن محرومون أفرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أنتم أنزلتموه من المزن أم نحن المنزلون ولو نشاء جعلناه أجاجا فلولا تشكرون أفرأيتم النار التي تورون أنتم أنشأتم شجرتها أم نحن المنشئون نحن جعلناها تذكرة ومتاعا للمقوين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون تنزيل من رب العالمين أفبهذا الحديث أنتم مدحنون وتجعلون رزقكم أنكم تكذبون فلولا إذا بلغت الحلقوم وأنتم حينئذ تنظرون ونحن أقرب إليه منكم ولكن لا تبصرون فلولا إن كنتم غير مدينين ترجعونها إن كنتم صادقين فأما إن كان من المقربين فروح وريحان وجنة نعيم وأما إن كان من أصحاب اليمين فسلام لك من أصحاب اليمين وأما إن كان من المكذبين الضالين فنزل من حميم وتصلية جحيم إن هذا لهو الحق اليقين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل رحم الله من قرأ سورة مباركة الفاتحة بسم الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم روي عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله قال سمعت فاطمة عنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت وعليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا عبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة عيتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بي ولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمّا فقلت وعليك السلام وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدا يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء وقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بي ولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمّا فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدا، السلام عليك يا من اختراه الله، أتعذن لي أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله، بنت رسول الله. فقلت عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتعذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسي وخليفتي وصاحب لي ولا وعاعي قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بدعتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء وأخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومع بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحمتي لحمهم لحمي ودموهم دمي، يعلم ما يعلمهم ويحزنهم ما يحزنهم. أنا هرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك على وعليهم واذهب عنهم رجسا وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا يخرا يجري ولا كل كي يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء خمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فحبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لعجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي عبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لعبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واستفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة إلا وكذا الله حاجاته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا وزوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
أحسنت. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. صلاة المغرب من الصلاة ونسخها. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. إني وجهت وجهي الذي فطر السماء. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. رب زدني علما والحقني بالصالحين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن عليا ولي الله، أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. صلاة الشأن الصلاة ونسقي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين وجهت وجهي فطر السماء. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر. ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. ربي زدني علما والحقني بالصالحين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده.
الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمد. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إنه ليس لعلم بموضع رزقي، وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي، فأجول في طلبه البلدان، فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران. لا أدري أم في سهل هو، أم في جبل، أم في أرض، أم في سماء، أم في بر، أم في بحر، وعلى يدي من، ومن قبل من، وقد علمت أن علمه عندك، وأسبابه بيدك، وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله، واجعل يا رب رزقك لي واسعا، ومطلبه سهلا، ومأخذه قريبا، ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا، فإنك غني عن عذابي، وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله، وجد على عبدك بفضلك، إنك ذو فضل عظيم. بمحمد وآل محمد صلوات. हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने, हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने और हसन से निस्बत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। कर चुकी है एक वादा, कर चुकी है एक वादा हमसे फातिमा ज़हरा, कर चुकी है एक वादा हमसे फातिमा ज़हरा, कर चुकी है एक वादा अब हमारी जन्नत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। या अली की मिदहत है, या हुसैन का मातम, या अली की मिदहत है, या हुसैन का मातम, हर नफस इबादत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। हम बताते दुनिया को, हमसे पूछती दुनिया, हम बताते दुनिया को, हमसे पूछती दुनिया, गम में कितनी लज़्ज़त है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने, हम नबी के आशिक हैं, हम अली के दीवाने और हसन से निस्बत है, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं, हम हुसैन वाले हैं। व मोहम्मद व आल मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु।
Dr. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Masjid al-Hayy, we would like to extend a Kushali Mubarak to you all on the occasion of the Wiladat of our 8th Imam, Hazrat Imam Ali Ridha alayhi salam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your du'as with the wasila of the Panjatan and continue to shower His blessings on you on this auspicious night. Surah Fatiha is requested for the Isal Sawab of Marhumin listed on the screen and for all Marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Amma Yujibu is requested for the names listed on the screen and for all those in need here and elsewhere. Let's recite together 5 times Amma Yujibu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra iza da'u wa yakshifu as-su'. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Office hours with Sayyid Kirmani. Members are welcome to schedule a private appointment to discuss religious matters, ask general questions, or share any concerns with Dr. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani. He will have weekly office hours on Tuesdays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. To get up a 30-minute session with Dr. Kirmani, please visit the link listed on the screen. Wise Academy registration. Kindergarten to grade 7 registration continues for the 2024-2025 school year. In addition to full-time schooling, Wise Academy also offers several part-time learning options for homeschooling families. These part-time options are available for grades 3 to 7. For more information, contact the number listed on the screen or visit the link displayed on the screen. Summer Camp. Wise Academy is excited to offer the 5th year of summer camp for children ages 4 to 11. Activities are designed to nurture your child's mind, body, and spirit through developmental play and skill-advancing activities. Please note that the deadline for registration is May 25th, 2024. For more information, please visit the link displayed on the screen. At this time, I would like to call Dr. Sayyid Shabbir Kirmani to give tonight's lecture with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman here in Florida or across the globe, wherever you may be hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There's a moment in time where Ma'mun al-Abbasi, he's having a dialogue and a discussion with his wazirs, his advisors. And in that moment of time, he's strategizing and he's thinking and figuring out what he wants to do. And at that point in time, one of the things that rulers have done throughout times is they've looked at the threats that may be posed to them. Businesses have also looked at this and other things, SWOT analyses and the other likes. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats? Similarly, rulers have looked at what are the threats that they face. So he's strategizing and he's looking at what are the threats to his dominion. So he talks to his wazirs, his advisors. And they say, there's 3 individuals who are a threat to your dominion. So who are they? Now sometimes they know answers and sometimes they're trying to learn. They're trying to get a scope of this. So Ma'mun is trying to get a scope of this. So he said, well, what's the situation? He said, one is another wazir who wasn't there at the time, and perhaps he made that arrangement because he knew that he was a threat, so that wazir was not there at the time. And so he said, there's another wazir, the one who's not here, that one's a threat to your kingdom and your dominion. He could plot against you. You think he's on your side, he may go behind your back and topple your empire and take sides with someone else. So he's a threat. Ma'mun said, no, don't worry, I'll take care of that. Who else? This is the second person is your own brother, Amin. Amin is a threat to your kingdom. He has prestige, he has honor and other aspects. And so he's a threat to your dominion. He said, don't worry about him, I'll take care of him. The third element is, he said, who's the third? So the third is a man by the name of Ali. Ali who? He's here where we are? He said, no. He said, Ali, son of Musa, al-Qa'dah. They call him ar-Ridha. He said, does he have power? Does he have a kingdom? Does he have money? Does he have an army? What does he have? He said, no, he doesn't have any of these things. He said, then why is he a threat? They said, he has one thing that you can't have. They probably said it in the most diplomatic terms to the ruler as they could. He said, what does he have? He said, it's not necessarily what's there, but the thing is that people have something related to him in their hearts. So what is that? He said, the people store their love, his love in their hearts. That's something you can't buy. That's something you can't get. This is the moment in time where we are told that he becomes aware, at least apparently, of the threat, and he begins to think about this Imam. The personality who we are here to commemorate tonight, the 8th holy Imam, Imam al-Ridha, is someone who gives us great guidance and understanding the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, and how there is some concept or some relationship between divinity and diplomacy. And how does that come about? Which is the question that I have for you and I. And that is, what is the relationship between diplomacy and divinity, or divinity and diplomacy? Is there a connection or a relationship or not? What do we understand from the life and times of this Imam, the 8th Imam, in terms of understanding his social life, his spiritual life, of course, and his political life? And what guidance does it give us in terms of understanding things from multiple dimensions? That sometimes we think linearly. We think there's only one way, my way or the highway. There's only one perspective. Whereas the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt teach us, there sometimes is complexity.
And you find that one of the themes that comes from the representatives of God on earth is they are there to spread the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth, the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. And when they have been strict or when they have been firm, it has been because someone has oppressed someone and stomped on their rights, their dignity or whatever it may be. That's where they showed the aspects of being stern. But otherwise, their job as representatives was try to make the mercy, compassion and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundant in the eyes of the people, so they feel it in such a way. Therefore, tonight I want to look very briefly and very quickly a few aspects of the life of this Imam that show us how diverse Islam is, how open-minded at times Islam was in terms of its implementation, and how broad the thinking of Islam is that sometimes we may not have even considered how broad Islam is in its understanding. Number one. Number two, how did this Imam teach us how to navigate divinity and diplomacy, how to navigate the social life, the spiritual life, the political life, the economic life, all the different dimensions of the life. How do we learn a different approach compared to maybe even other Imams, but with a common goal? And the third element is, how is it that building a relationship between this Imam, it cuts across the sectarian divide in Islam, that is the Shia-Sunni divide and other divides, that he's respected by many sides, all sides of the aisle, as well as what benefits this relationship can foster in our lives in terms of our spirituality and elevating us. What are some events that the Imam's life teaches us about that we can implement in our own lives or learn from in our own lives, so that we can get the blessings of this Imam, the Ahlul Bayt, and ultimately of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by virtue of these personalities in our own lives. This is our agenda for the brief moments we are here together. Wherever you are, here in Florida or across the globe, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. At the first level, we need to understand historically what's going on during the time of this Imam. The Imam is living in an era where it's the spark of the golden age. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher of the 20th century, one of the most renowned philosophers, he said that, we often say, we call 1,000 years ago, we call up to 1,200 years ago, we call, for example, 800 years ago, we call them the Dark Ages. But he said that's not quite fair, that's not quite true. Why? He says because the reality of the matter is, Europe was in the Dark Ages. That doesn't mean the world was in the Dark Ages. He says in China, the Tang dynasty was flourishing. In the Muslim world, the golden age had emerged and that society was flourishing. So we sometimes have remnants of one perspective, and based on that we say that the world was in the Dark Ages because Europe was in the Dark Ages. This is also why, you ever thought about why they call it the Middle East? Why is it called the Middle East? Why isn't it called Western Asia? It's called that because relative to the United Kingdom it's the Middle East. But the reality is, it's only for them. That doesn't mean for the whole world it's the Middle East. So it's important for us to think about, where did these concepts come from? It's those people who wrote history. And so now we need to contemplate on that. Number one. Number two, it's the era of the ruler Charlemagne. Charlemagne is a great king, Christian king of the world at that time. And historians mark that this was a time where the Charlemagne, who was considered a great king at the time, was behind the Muslim empire. Example, the Abbasids had sent a water clock as a gift to Charlemagne. And there's famous paintings that you can see in some of the museums of the world. The Germans, 200 years ago, they had a huge obsession with the Arab and Persian empires in their history. In fact, some of them even wrote ghazals in poetry in the meter of Umar bin Khayyam and the likes. Or Umar al-Khayyam, you may have heard of his name. In fact, Western European soldiers, when they would go to the battlefield, they used to be reciting the poems of Umar al-Khayyam. You may not have known this. But that's how much it was flourishing in Europe and how people were obsessed with it at the time. Anyways, he sent a water clock, a water-powered clock at that time to Charlemagne, and he was baffled and he thought it was sorcery. He thought it was magic. He was like, what is this? So keeping all of these pictures in mind, this is an era where development has progressed, science has progressed, technology has progressed. By the way, I remind you, we still don't know how the pyramids were fully made. There are technologies that existed before us, we still can't figure them out.
So we shouldn't get so arrogant as a society to think we have gotten so far ahead. There were still people who've done things that we still haven't figured out fully yet. So keeping all of these things in mind, coming to the next level, the Imam's story in his journey of diplomacy and divinity, where does that come from? There's a moment in time that I want to come back to try to, for us to understand this dimension. There's a moment in time during the life of our first Imam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, where he said, if I was to get the opportunity to decide as a jurist, as you know, the Imam was not only someone who was a ruler politically and a statesman, he was also a judge. He was also a hakim. He was also a lawyer. He was an expert in Islamic law, obviously. And so he said, if I had the opportunity to judge for the people of the Bible, by the Bible, I would judge with them with the Bible better than their own people. And if I had the opportunity to judge with the people of the Torah, between the Torah and them, I would judge more honestly and more sincerely and with more integrity to that book than their own people would do it with their own book. That is, I would judge the people of the Bible by the Bible, I would judge the people by the Torah, and I would judge the people of the Quran by the Quran. Meaning the Imam is saying, I have mastery over all three of these, by the way. Otherwise, how is he saying this? Number one. Number two, he's saying that I would take their own considerations into account. Now here's the question. Did Imam have that opportunity during his lifetime? Maybe, maybe not. We're not fully positive on that. However, one thing is for certain. The Imam established his principles of humanity that are there. But if you fast forward to the time of the 8th Imam actually got to personify and actually act on what his grandfather Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen had said. Because he actually had the opportunity to debate and discuss and have an interfaith dialogue with the Christians of the time, the Jews of the time, the Zoroastrians of the time, even the atheists of the time. And the Imam answered to all of them. This is why this Imam is also known as Alim Ali Muhammad, the scholar of the holy household. In a household where everyone is a scholar. Why? Because he made this knowledge, all of them are scholars, but he made the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt known at an international level. There were delegations that used to come to the Abbasids that were from all over the world, and he used to have court dialogues with all of them, and he used to answer them to their satisfaction. This is one aspect of the equation of the Imam. But here's some other complexity at the third level that I wanted to share with you. We sometimes need to even think, based on how the Imams operated, what wisdom did they have? How were they thinking? And how do we see it? You know, Imam Hussein went to the battlefield, and there's no doubt about it. But there's also the example of Imam Hassan. And Imam Hassan wrote a peace treaty with Muawiyah. And Imam Hussein alayhi salam abided by that for 10 years after the death and the shahadat of Imam Hassan. So it is actually Sulh, not Hassan, but Sulh Hasnain in some sense. Both Imams abided by it. It wasn't until Muawiyah appointed his son, which was not supposed to happen, that the Imam rose. But there are other approaches of other Imams which we need to think about. Allow me to explain. What if I tell you there's a ruler by the name of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Historically, from Banu Umayyah, he was Umar the second, he's known as. And I tell you, you know, he gave fadak back to the Ahlul Bayt, which he did historically, the physical fadak. And I say to you, this is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. You say, wow, he's amazing, he's phenomenal. We may start saying, radiyallahu, we may start saying all of these things. But I say, hold on a second. He still didn't give the right back to the Ahlul Bayt. He still took the position of power. So in some sense, yes, he did some good, but doesn't mean he was all good. Similarly, when it comes to this, we need to be able to understand that people and human beings as society are complicated. They're three-dimensional in different ways, and some people, you may find they have some very good attributes, and they're generally very good, but occasionally they have some problems. And there's some people who are the opposite. They're generally sometimes very not good, and sometimes they have some elements of good with them. So there's complexity here. What does it have to do with Islam and diplomacy and divinity? You'll find that when it comes to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was always a principle. Whether you go to, for example, Sulaiman and Bilqis, when he sends a letter, from Sulaiman sends a letter to Bilqis, the queen of Sheba, and he writes in the letter where the Quran has two Bismillahs in one surah, Innahu min Sulaiman, Innahu Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and he invites her to accept the religion of God. And then she has a dialogue with her wazirs and her advisors and saying, is he just someone who is power hungry, money hungry, or is he truly one of God? And so she said, you know what I'll do? We'll test him. You remember Zulqarnain did the same thing. When Zulqarnain, the people said, that build us this wall against Ya'juj and Ma'juj and Gog and Magog and we'll pay you. He said, I don't need your money. What Allah has given to me is more than enough, sufficient. I need your manpower, I need your labor power. So similarly, when it comes to this, the Queen of Sheba said, well, and then the advisors discussed, they said, what should we do? So they came to this understanding that let's offer Sulaiman money. Now look, Allah had already given him everything. Wealth and kingdom and dominion over birds and animals and bees and jinn and ins. So they said, if he wants the money, then he's just out for power and hunger and he won't be filled. We'll have to fight him and we'll fight him. But if he's not into that and he's not up for that and he doesn't catch the bait, so to speak, then he may have a point. And so when Queen of Sheba sent that message and she noticed that Sulaiman had no interest in the material wealth, he was sincerely saying this, she came to an agreement and there was diplomatic relations, so to speak. Similarly, when it comes to the life of Rasulullah, you'll find that Rasulullah, whenever it was possible, he focused and hearkened on having a diplomatic conclusion to matters. He didn't want to go to the battlefield unless it was an absolute necessity. So Sulh Hudaybiyah is a very prime example in front of your eyes, to the point that Rasulullah always tried to do that. In fact, even before his announcement of Risala, as you know, he announced Hilf al-Fudul, the League of Justice, as it is called, for merchants. There was a man who came to Mecca and he had been swindled by a local Meccan. And so he paid money and he was supposed to get produce and he was supposed to get his products that he purchased, and he said, no, I don't know you. He just totally swindled him. And so he went on Abu Qubais and he shouted, he said, oh people of Mecca, is there anyone who's going to defend my honor? I'm a foreigner who came to your land to do business and trade, and I've been cheated and swindled. Is there anyone? And at that point, amongst a coalition of people, Rasulullah was amongst them, who came forward and said, look, we need to protect the rights of anyone who comes here. It's not only better for our business, it's the right thing to do. So the Imams and the Prophets always operate on this principle. It wasn't until arrogance came into the picture. It wasn't until people started to think they were like Namrud or Fir'aun or Haman or Qarun or the likes of these personalities, or Yazid or and the likes. Then Allah actively pursued that. So now comes the time in the example of this Imam. I remind you very quickly, when it comes to the life of this Imam, you have to know the eras of the empires changing and shifting. So it's the Umayyads who are ruling, and the Imam is at the start of the Abbasid Empire. At the Abbasid Empire, the one who established the New Baghdad, as you know, old Baghdad is very historic. They call it the cradle of civilization, or Mesopotamia. But New Baghdad was established by Mansur. And Mansur was someone who was very bloodthirsty. In fact, you'll know historically, it said that he would not establish the foundation of a building until he drained the blood of a Sayyid Hassani in the foundation cement. So they would mix that with the blood and the cement and establish that. It was up to this point, if you recall, that there used to be a scent that used to come, a fragrance from the line of the Ahlul Bayt, that the seventh Imam himself prayed for and did dua, that it's removed, because they are being recognized by this and being killed and slaughtered left, right and center. So these are also difficulties that the Shias were facing and the Muslims at large. In this environment, why did the Imam accept the heir apparent or the regency or the crown prince position from someone like Ma'mun, who after Mansur came Harun, and Harun had two sons, Ma'mun and Amin, and eventually Ma'mun is there. Now the question comes forward is interesting, but bigger than that question is perhaps understanding the motives of Ma'mun before you understand the motives of the Imam. And Ma'mun had a certain predicament. As you know, his father was Harun al-Abbasi. People call him Harun al-Rashid. Well, we don't call him that because Rashid means rightly guided. If you were to translate Harun al-Rashid into English, it would be Aaron the rightly guided. Of course, we don't accept he's rightly guided, so we call him al-Abbasi. Anyways, he had the two sons. Now the problem this is what historians have written and ulama have written. The problem that Ma'mun had was that he had a legitimacy problem within the house of the Abbasids, within his own internal house. And the problem was that his mother was someone who was a concubine. His mother was not someone who was at the level of his father. And as a result of that, the family didn't see him at the same level of everyone else. So he needed something to elevate himself. This is one reason. Another reason was he was not someone who was religiously grounded or religiously established. So he needed to make sure that he established himself religiously. So one of the ways he could do this was by means of getting the Imam from Medina to Marv. The third element was what I mentioned at the beginning, is the threat that he saw from the following of the Imam. He knew that the Shi'as and the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they had this followership, and if they were to use it, there could be a big problem. So bringing all of these pieces of the puzzle together, the Imam came to this and he took this position he was forced into it. But he laid a condition, the same way that Imam Hassan did. If you recall, in the Sulh of Imam Hassan, he laid a condition, and the condition was that all of those things that, for example, after you no one will be appointed. Imam Hassan said all of those things, and he said you will give the money, blood money to the Shia, you'll stop the cursing, and all of those things are in front of you. Similarly, Imam ar-Ridha made a very, very important clause in this acceptance of the vice regency or the crown prince position. And he said, look, I'll take the position, but I'm not going to make any rulings. I'm not going to make any verdicts. I'm not going to make any judgments. So he's saying, look, it's as clear as day. This is a ceremonial position, a symbolic position that you forced my hand in being. But despite the Imam taking that, he leveraged this position for good. How? He leveraged it by making sure that those who were oppressed, particularly amongst the Shi'as, he granted them, helped them get access to finances and wealth. He helped them in whatever capacity he could. And he also used the forum in order to make sure that the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt is not only safeguarded, but also it is something that is preserved for future generations, and also it proliferates and is shared throughout the world. It is during this time that this Imam, you'll find Tibb al-Radhawi, for example, the medicine of Imam al-Ridha, for example. The same way you have Tibb al-Nabawi and Tibb of the other A'immah, there's a medicine that has been taught by this Imam. There is, for example, his debates with other scholars. There's many answers that this Imam gave that have been documented during this time. So he leveraged it for financial gain for those who have been oppressed and usurped, their rights been usurped. He used it in order to proliferate knowledge, and he also used it in order to bring society together to the best position possible. What does that mean for you and I today? Look, as our Imam Bargahs, our Husainiyas evolve, we need to understand that the Imams also showed us how to live in a multi-religious environment, in an environment that has multiple religions. He was dealing with Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, even atheists. And I invite you to read the debates of the Imam. The Imam was dealing with some atheists who are much more sophisticated than the atheists of today. The atheists of today, by many regards, are very simple compared to some of the ones who were living at that time. They had better questions. And the Imams didn't say, you're kafir, you're this, you're that. They withheld judgment. They used first logic. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites us to this in the Quran. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'idhatil hasana. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wajadil billati hiya ahsan. That invite people, exhort them to the way of your Lord in the best of ways. And debate with them and discuss with them in the best of ways. That is, Allah didn't say to forcefully impose your view on others. No. In fact, you'll find that under Islam, you'll find that even historically, Jews, Christians, and many others, they lived, generally speaking, much more harmonious than, for example, Muslims living under other domains, historically. And I can give you references to this in Europe, in Spain, and Portugal 500 years ago, and you can find other examples of this. For example, when the Jewish community was exiled from Spain and Portugal, they went to the Ottoman Empire, and many of them became judges and things of this nature. One of the biggest Jewish communities in the world, up to 100 years ago, was in Iraq, as you know, historically, and in Iran. So these are things that people forget historically. So anyways, so the Imam had some discussions, as I'm trying to bring everything together. He had diplomacy in terms of what did he use this for within that basis. He used it to spread the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the compassion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? You know, there was this guy who used to be paid by Ma'mun to harass the Imam. He used to come to the Imam's house and used to ransack the Imam's house at times. This was before he even came into Medina, before he came to Marv, when he was in Medina. They used to harass the Imams. And so one day the Imam says to him, look, I know why you've come. You've come to cause a ruckus. You're going to enter into the house. But let me tell you this. Look, I know you want money. I'll go get whatever wealth is in the house. I'll give it to you. Just don't come and harass the family. He said, okay. So the Imam went in, brought the wealth back, and he gave it to him, and he went on his way. This is someone who was a paid person to harass the Imam. Many years later, when the Imam became the Wali al-Ahad of Ma'mun, this same person was brought as a prisoner under the Imam. So you know the tides turn. And in politics till this day, some people who used to be friends a decade or two ago become the enemies down the road. It's how it happened. Same thing happened with Ma'mun. So this same guy became a prisoner. At that point in time, the Imam is in the court and Ma'mun is there. At that point in time, he enters into the court. And all the prisoners are there, he's one of them. He catches glance and eyes with the Imam. And the Imam whispers something to Ma'mun. And at that point in time, when it comes to the time for this person to speak, he says, Al-Junaidi, he says, whatever you do, I beg of you, do not listen to what this man said to you in your ear. Because he's remembering all the harassment he's done. He's remembering all of the things that he did that he shouldn't have done. All the things, how many times you hurt the Imam, how many times. He's probably thinking this is the Imam's opportunity. He's the prince, crown prince, he can take revenge. He says, are you sure you don't want me to do what he said? He said, think about it. He said, yes, I know. Whatever you're going to do to me, it's not as bad as what he must have told you, so I'm begging you, don't listen to him. Don't do what he said. He said, very well, I won't do what he said. He said, okay, off with his head. He said, what do you mean? He said, he told me to pardon you and forgive you. Ali ibn Musa ar-Ridha, he told me to pardon and forgive you because he knew you from the past. He said, you told me not to do what he's doing, so I'm doing the opposite and I'm having your head taken. This was the compassion, the love of Allah. We would not understand the love and mercy of God on earth had we not had these personalities. Because people would say, we live in an eye for eye world. We live in a world where you know, on benefit side, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. And on the vicious side of human beings, we're like, if you wronged me, I'm going to wrong you 10 times worse. But these Imams showed us what Allah's compassion is, what Allah's mercy and rahim is. We would not understand Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim had it not been for these personalities on earth. So there's a divine mercy and divine love that we see within this, number one. Number two, this didn't extend only to human beings. There's a moment in time where there is a hunter, right? You know, we call this Imam Zamin. You must have heard of this. Or another title is Zamin Ahu. Ahu is deer. There's a moment in time where the Imam is out and there's a man who's hunting. When he's hunting, at that point in time, he's locked his target and he's got a deer in the cross of his bow for an arrow, for example. And he's about to take aim. And at that point in time, their narrations say the same way that Sulaiman had this ability to converse with the animals. By the way, if you know the story of the Imam used to speak to the people whenever they used to come from Rome or Byzantium or otherwise, he would speak to them in their language. Imam Ali used to do this as well. People used to come from Sindh, and you must have known Sindh. He used to speak to them in Sindhi at that time, according to narrations. And people used to say, how do you know this language? So we know people's languages. Anyways, at that point in time, the Imam was there at that point when this person is hunting. At that point in time, when he's about to take aim and he's about to shoot, this deer comes to speak to the Imam. And they have a conversation. This guy's baffled, what's going on here? It's otherworldly, you know. There may be a time, by the way, in science, we're making progression into communication with certain types of birds and certain types of animals. We're not there yet fully, but we're making progress on this right now while we speak in the scientific community. So if the Imam has known that at that time, it shouldn't be that surprising, especially for us in this day. Anyways, the Imam says, I ask you, I want to convey something to you. And the Imam said, look, I just had a conversation. This deer came to me and said, look, I'm a mother deer and I have some baby deer. And I set out to get some food for them and make arrangements for them. Now he has come to hunt me, no problem. But can he please allow me to go back and just feed my children, and I give you my word that I'll come back. The Imam said, I am the Zamin, I am the one who's going to take custody of her word. Let her go back to her children, and then after that she will come back to you, and then you can do your way. The narration says that he was flabbergasted and he didn't know what to do. He said, okay, sure. He didn't think that this would really happen. Like, this animal's going to come back? What animal's going to come back? And eventually, this mother deer goes, feeds the children, comes back, And this guy is flabbergasted and absolutely baffled and astonished, and he says, how can I kill this animal now? He said that after this miracle that I've seen in front of my own eyes, how can I do this? The principle being, we talk about human rights, what about animal rights? The Imams were looking way ahead of the curve on these dynamics. You know, for example, even in our world, how are some of the animals that we that are in the produce markets, how are they slaughtered? Sometimes you'll look at it, if you investigate these things, you'll be baffled at the oppression that may be happening. And so the Imams wanted us to get beyond just the humanity that we should feel for one another, to also understand that humans, beyond that, animals have rights, and animals, we should have compassion for them. But sometimes our society misses these aspects of the equation. The next element, which I'm trying to draw all of these pieces of the puzzle together to bring this point home. You know, this Imam is someone, his father is known as Babul Hawayij, as you know very well, Imam al-Qa'dah, but this Imam is no less, according to riwayat, in terms of his karamat, his mu'ajizat, and his help and his assistance. There's a well-renowned story amongst the ulama, a narration of a mu'ajizah of the Imam. There's a moment in time, not very long ago, some years ago, there's a man who he was in financial ruin. And when he was in financial ruin, it was accepted that, you know, just to help you understand how Muslims were on the same page on this, and how the 6th Imam, the 7th Imam, the 8th Imam, and the 1st Imam, Imam Ali, they cut across the Shia-Sunni divide. You know, the Sufis, who are neither, they are their own sect, but they're predominantly Sunni, their basis, they have tremendous admiration for the 6th Imam, the 7th Imam, and the 8th Imam. And that's something that we need to understand, that there was a time where these were commemorated by people of all sorts. In fact, even Rumi, if you go over his grave in Turkey, you will find that he has the 12 Imams' names over his grave. Why? He was not a Shia. But if you look at historically, Dr. Hassan Abbas mentions this in his book, and he references this, the one who wrote Prophet's Heir by Yale University Press, that the Ottomans followed a form of Sunniism called Sunni Ahlul Bayt-ism. That they followed Sunniism, but they respected the Ahlul Bayt to that extent. So now, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Now, Ahmad bin Hanbal is where the Hanbalis come from. Inside the Hanbalis, inside them, one sect is Wahhabis. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal says, you know that hadith of Silsilatul Zahab that you've heard since childhood, that the Imam said, Kalimatu la ilaha illallah hisni, فَمَنْ دَخَلَ حِسْنِي أَمِنَ مِنْ عَذَابِي. That when the crowd came out and they saw the Imam, and the Imam said that I will give you, they asked for something from the Imam, a statement, and the Imam says, I will tell you that the statement La ilaha illallah is a fort. Whoever enters into the fort is protected. وَلَكِنْ بِشَرْطِهَا وَشُرُوتِهَا, but with conditions. And we are amongst those conditions. But before that, he recited the sanad, the chain of narrators. And he said, this I heard from my father, who heard from his father, all the way back to Rasulullah. Ahmad bin Hanbal, who's clearly not a Shia, he said, if you just write the sanad of this hadith, and you write it on a, for example, piece of paper, and you put in water, and you make someone who has gone insane drink it, he should become sane, don't become surprised. So now this environment, I'm telling you the following. This wealthy man had gotten essentially bankrupt, and he had nothing. And when people go through tremendous difficulty in Iran and across the world, ask people in your own community how many people, maybe they weren't having children, they had some difficulty not being resolved. Imam Ridha has helped so many people. Anyways, he was essentially bankrupt. He somehow got to Khurasan, and he somehow got to the vicinity of Mashhad, and he said, look, he was walking by and he's in a state of complete confusion and worry. And he says to himself, look, he stumbled across a coin on the street. He said, you know, when you're in desperation, you just start thinking, you know, maybe any sign of hope or a glimmer or a ray of hope. He said, maybe this is something. So he picked up the coin. In front of him, you saw, this was a time where they had like a phone booth, you know, and a coin. He saw a phone booth. So I got a coin and a phone booth. So what can I do? He said, you know what I'll do? He entered the phone booth and he said, I'll put the coin in and I'll dial one number at random. So whatever the number of digits were, he said, I'll dial this number and I'll call someone, just see, maybe they can help me. It's anonymous. You know what, because he also was a sizable businessman at what time, but he wanted to keep his dignity. And so I'll anonymously call someone. He had done his tawassul and his dua to the Imam, and he had walked out of the haram, and he's in this state. So he dialed a number at random. When he dialed this number at random, he said, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. I said, who is it? He said, look, and this is before the days of phone scams and all of these things. People were sincere at these times. So he said, look, who are you? He said, I'm a zawar of the Imam. I'm a zair of the Imam. I said, okay. So what do you want? He said, look, I had a sizable business and now I've gotten ruined financially. I'm bankrupt. I'm done. And I just came to the Imam to do dua to see if he'd help me. He told him the story honestly, that I stumbled on a coin. I couldn't make this up. I stumbled on a coin, I put it in there and I randomly called and I'm in this situation, I need help. He said, where are you? He said, I'm in this location. He said, okay, is that phone booth? Okay, he said, stay right there, don't move a muscle, I'm sending someone. So he sent someone. Car came, person came. He said, are you so-and-so? Yes, assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. He said, please come with me. Sat in the car, came back to the house, saw a huge mansion in front of him, came in. He said, assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. He said, you're the person I spoke to on the phone? He said, yes. He said, please sit, have some things. They spoke. He said, how much do you need? He said, I need a lot, but I don't know if, he said, how much is a lot? How much is a lot? Let's say it's, at that time it was 20,000 or toman, which at this time maybe not much. Let's say 20 million, 30 million, whatever in US dollars, let's make it that, right? So he said, I had a certain amount that I needed. So I needed 50 million tomans at that time. He said, that's what my entry level. What I really need is much more than that. I need 250 million. But I'm not going to ask you that because that's too much of a burden. But if you can give me a 50, I can get back on my feet. He said, I'll give you the 250. I said, why? What do you want? He said, I was in a circumstance similar to yours, but my circumstance was different. He said, what do you mean? He said, a minute ago this young boy came and gave you a glass of water? I said, yeah. He said, that's my son. A few years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer. He was on his last leg. The doctors had said, look, he doesn't have a chance. There's 3 tests that they had to get done. We took him to Europe. He got them done. Each of them came out not in his favor. And so I was desperate. I had all the money in the world, but I didn't have my son's health. And as the old saying goes, everyone wants 1,000,000 things in life, 1,000 things in life. But if you ask the person who's ill, they only want one thing, health. So he said, his son, that's all he wanted. So he said, I came to the door that I knew the only person who could help me, nobody else could help me. He said, I came to the door of Imam ar-Ridha. And I said, Ya ibn Rasulullah. I said, oh, Imam ar-Ridha, look, I haven't been the best person my whole life. I spent my life in work and business and making money. I wasn't the most practicing, I wasn't the most religious, but this is my son. And he's between life and death. If you can help me, please help me. And if you help me, I will do something for one of your zawar, one of your zairs, one of your visitors that no one's ever seen. He said, eventually we went back for our tests for second round, and the doctor said, look, there's 3 tests, 2 of them have come out negative. We have to do the 3rd one, and we'll see the results of it. And they took the test for the third test, and they found that they didn't find any cancer in that. They said, this is strange and odd. We thought it would be surefire that he would have this ailment at this point. They said, oh, look, we're going to run test A and B again. They ran test A, came out negative. He was good. He was shocked. Ran test B, negative again. Saying all the tests that we took first time around are now coming back negative. It seems like he's fine. It seems like he's cured. They said they didn't understand. He said, I understood at that moment, this was beyond this realm. This was my Imam helping me. And so he said, from that day till this day, when my son was cured at that point, he's never had the issue since then, I've been sitting in my office, not because I need to work, but I'm hoping that one day someone walks into my office or someone calls my phone and says that they are the zawar and the zair of the Imam and they need help. Your presence answered my dua. So sometimes we don't realize someone's problem may be solving someone else's dua. which was exactly the case in this scenario. And so when you asked me and you said 50 million will do, but I actually need more than that, I needed to be honest with myself that this is not a business transaction that I'm trying to get a better deal on. This was me dealing with my Imam and dealing with Allah ultimately. And so I promised that I would do something that no one has seen. And so I needed to give something that you needed, and that was well above what anyone would imagine. I'm telling you this because this is an Imam who in this era and this time is assisting and helping. You don't think he can help you and I? Remember, it all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They themselves would always say, Bi-iznillah, there is nothing. Sulaiman would say, Bi-iznillah, there's nothing. Without the help, Bi-iznillah, there's nothing. So the understanding is the rahmah of Allah, the mercy of Allah, the diplomacy of Allah is understood through this Imam, and he used this to help the believers at that time and at this time. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are able to learn from the life and the legacy of Imam al-Ridha. We are able to learn from his generosity, his compassion, his patience, his resilience in dealing with people and in society. We pray and hope that the Imam is zamin for us the same way he was with the deer, the same way he was with these personalities who are struggling in their difficulties. We hope and pray that the Imam has his karam on us, and we hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hastens the reappearance of Imam Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, the son of Imam al-Ridha, and allow us to be amongst his companions when he returns. A final request to please recite Surah Al-Fatiha for your marhumin, for our marhumin, and for all those who do not have someone to recite a Fatiha for them this night. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha ma'as salawat. One short line of poetry, which I always try to recite. As you know, it's the nights of Imam al-Ridha, but also Bibi Ma'suma Qum. Between this week of Bibi Ma'suma Qum and Imam al-Ridha, they say that they celebrate this whole week in Iran as a week of mercy. And the poet draws a beautiful analogy when you think about Bibi Ma'suma Qum and Imam al-Ridha and another brother and sister. And he says, Jab bhi main Qum gaya, Mashhad ki faza se pehle. Jab bhi main Qum gaya, Mashhad ki faza se pehle. यूं लगा शाम गया करबो बला से पहले यूं लगा शाम गया करबो बला से पहले. He says, whenever I went to Qum before I went to Mashhad, I felt it was as if I was going to Sham before I was going to Karbala. Because the same way there's two brothers and sisters, there's a brother and sister here, there's a brother and sister there in Sham and Karbala. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have the grace of these personalities in our lives, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. In honor of our blessed eighth Imam, please fill this gathering with one more loud Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. मैं इस तरह से हूँ या रब तेरी सना के बगैर. मैं इस तरह से हूँ या रब तेरी सना के बगैर के जैसे जी नहीं सकता कोई हवा के बगैर, कि जैसे जी नहीं सकता कोई हवा के बगैर। कसम खुदा की अधूरी किताब लगती थी, बयाज हमद मुझे नाते मुस्तफ़ा के बगैर। न मेरी हमद मुकम्मल है मुस्तफ़ा के बगैर। न मेरी हमद मुकम्मल है मुस्तफ़ा के बगैर। न मेरी नात मुकम्मल है मुर्तज़ा के बगैर। या अली। न मेरी नात मुकम्मल है मुर्तज़ा के बगैर। दलील कोई नहीं थी, दलील कोई नहीं थी खुदा के होने की। दलील कोई नहीं थी खुदा के होने की। अली ओ फातिमा हसनैन ओ मुस्तफ़ा के बगैर। अली ओ फातिमा हसनैन ओ मुस्तफ़ा के बगैर। सल्लल्लाहु अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद। A few lines in honor of our 8th Imam, inshallah. एक नजफ में मेरा अली है, एक अली ईरान में है। एक नजफ में मेरा अली है, एक अली ईरान में है। हम पल्ला दोनों की सखावत कुदरत के मीज़ान में है। मशहद इनके दम से मुक़द्दस शहर हुआ है शहरों में। मशहद इनके दम से मुक़द्दस शहर हुआ है शहरों में, जैसे के रहमान का सूरा दुल्हन सा कुरान में है, जैसे के रहमान का सूरा दुल्हन सा कुरान में है। और मौला रज़ा और मेहदी दी में, मौला रज़ा और मेहदी दी में फ़र्क यही मामूली है। मौला रज़ा और मेहदी दी में फ़र्क यही मामूली है। एक कुरान खुला रखा है, एक अभी जुज़दान में है। एक कुरान खुला रखा है, एक अभी जुज़दान में है। Ya Ali. For the hastening of the reappearance of the 12th Imam, please recite one last Sallu ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Ya Imam Raza, 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 Ya Imam Raza,
Ya Imam Raza, Ya Imam।
पूछने हाल नकीरैन जबाए मेरा, पूछने हाल नकीरैन जबाए मेरा, मैंने दोहराया जवाबन जो कसीदा तेरा। वजद में आके फिर वो भी कहने लगे, मैं भी कहने लगा। या इमाम रज़ा, 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 या इमाम। दिल पे मौला है मेरे सिर्फ हुकूमत तेरी, दिल पे मौला है मेरे सिर्फ हुकूमत तेरी। बजती रहती है मेरे सीने में नौबत तेरी। बात साबित हुई मेरे सीने में भी एक हरम है तेरा। या इमाम रज़ा, या इमाम रज़ा,
या इमाम रज़ा, या इमाम रज़ा, या इमाम।
जीते जी जान से अपनी मैं गुजर जाऊंगा, जीते जी जान से अपनी मैं गुजर जाऊंगा। फिर से मशहद न बुलाओगे तो मर जाऊंगा। ऐ इमामे गरीब तुम हो मेरे तबीब, जल्द कर दो दवा। या इमामे रज़ा, या इमामे
या इमामे रज़ा, या इमामे वज़ा, या इमामे वज़ा,
या इमामे पूछने हाल नकीरैन जबाए मेरा। पूछने हाल नकीरैन जबाए मेरा। मैंने दोहराया जवाबन जो कसीदा तेरा। वजद में आके फिर वो भी कहने लगे, मैं भी कहने लगा। या इमामे रज़ा, या इमामे,
या इमामे रज़ा, या इमामे वज़ा, या इमामे वज़ा, या इमामे
रज़ा। सल्लल्लाहु अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद। सूरतुल मुबारकतुल फातिहा। بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إلهي عظم البلاء وبرح الخفاء وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وذاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المؤول في شدة والرخاء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وأرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم ففرج عنا بحقهم فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب. يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اكفياني فإنكما كافيان وانصراني فإنكما ناصران. يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث 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 أدركني 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 الساعة 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 العجل 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 يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا خاتم النبيين، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي الأسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن، يا صاحب العصر والزمان، سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن ويا كعبة الإيمان جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Chai and snacks are served in the dining hall. Just a quick announcement. Chai and snacks are served in the dining hall.